So I'm gonna rabble on, talk on about the concerns about what's happening in the world, following the experts talking about these issues. I, of course, do not have enough insight or knowledge on my own to understand, but I can use my ability to evaluate and analyze, criticize, combine the information. This is also a skill that's lost in many people today, that they maybe would listen to one source and take it for granted or refuse it as not true. But combining these sources of information to get an idea of what's going on, who's saying who, what's concerning, is this exaggeration, is it gonna last, and so on. Well, I don't know, but I can feel that big changes might be coming, and maybe bigger than we think, and maybe not. Maybe this will just go pass us by and go over in a way we didn't expect. Maybe the artificial intelligence that's taking place now would help us, like what can you say, reevaluate everything, and also make people and people who are decision makers aware of the calculations and the consequences of them when they want to go into war or not. But I'm sure that not everybody is thinking like that out there, since we have several wars ongoing in the world, not the least in Africa. Um, we have troubles in Asia. We have a lot of tension. You can follow different experts, highly knowledgeable experts on this. You will easily find them on YouTube. They are very promoted, and you can just search for the topics on this and that, and then you can find someone who speaks in depth about it, more in depth than just a news channel is giving you a 5 minute analysis or so. And so, what to do with all this information? Information can be good if you can use it and harvest it to something. Well, I can't use it a lot. I can only use it to prepare myself for a war. How can you prepare yourself for a war? Getting ready to be a soldier, getting ready to be someone who hide or flee or go somewhere else. But where is that somewhere else? Some people would say, well, in where we are far away from everything. But nobody is really far away from everything in the time we are in now. It's like the world is really much more connected than we previously had been in. So in earlier days, you could, like, in one part you had a storm, like a war going on. I call it a storm, huh? But in other places it's totally quiet. If you could go to Tasmanian Island and New Zealand, even those got affected by World War II, but not so much. Their societies kept relatively peace and out of the trouble. And so you can find some islands out there. But today, nothing is not affected. Global traffic, transportation, military, satellites, internet, everything has been connected almost down to the minus the smallest level. So, what kind of new situation will we be in if people survive these wars or they start somewhere? Everybody, like, who are speaking, it's like they are telling us, a lot of science is showing us we are headed towards a war. Maybe we're already jaywalked into it, or maybe we are already in it, but we don't really know because it hasn't really, it didn't break out yet. But some would say they're keeping an eye for signs, like you say. Some would say Taiwan is the place where it will gonna go up in fire. Others would say it's on the border between India and Pakistan, and the countries dividing themselves among these two. And some would say it's over the petrol and the Gulf, and others would say no, it's between Europe and the United States, because even though they are friends, they are also in tension. And some would say it's inside Europe where we get these new ideologies rising from underneath the ground and taking over and giving a lot of trouble with all the weapons they've got. Others would say it's China and Japan, or China and the United States directly, and so on and so on. It's always related to hunger. I can, like, understand from the analysis I read. It's related to depression in economics and in how people. But I see also it's related to something deeper. It's the psychology. I spoke about that in part one. That we have lost the human education, the human understanding of altruism, the good values, the values of collaboration, even the ability to analyze and to live through hard times is basically basically lost many places. So what will that do? Some would see like future scenarios. I know many countries and universities, they put up these future scenarios of what's going to happen in the future, and many keep them secret because they have, of course, factors they can build on as analysis that I don't have. But sometimes they can be overwhelmed by these factors. So somebody like me, just sitting outside everything, would be able maybe to see more clearly than all these people having all these numbers and all these things to all these components and factors to try to deal with. If you want to put a picture together of the future, you need a lot of elements from the now and the past to put it together. And so these elements can also be overwhelming and too many, and showing too many directions to be able to show you a true picture. Even though some have put together some picture of a Europe in crisis, United States faltering its dominating position, new powers rising, and a rising of the old ideologies taking over by one strong leadership, military leadership, and so on. So this basic human instinct of following the not following the strongest, following the power and crushing down the opponents will take over again. This is a deep human instinct. But what I can see behind the lines of all this is that there are three major powers hidden out there that maybe is going to take over or will get the chance to take over. One of them is Israel, because the Israelis are getting more and more independent, and we are in the time of the Israelis. And I wish them all best and luck with that. I know many people hate them and think they are some evil on earth, but I don't see it like that. I see it that civilizations change power, power changes hands, and civilizations the same. What civilization keeps to its morals, values of righteousness, goodness, try not to be suppressive without any necessary needs, and can amass the power of knowledge, technology, harvest it, have people everywhere, and they have done that. So they deserve a decade where they can maybe rule the world or control it or show what they can do with it. This is what I think God does with us all. He gives the power from civilization, and those who have the ability, they take it and they keep it. And they keep it until they lose it, and they lose it only because they falter to keep up with the responsibility of it. And they start like lavishing themselves and are becoming arrogant, and all this we know, the deceit, the cheat, corruption that hits in, and they find themselves invisible and invincible. Nobody can beat them. That happened to the Turks when they lost their empire. They thought, nobody can beat us. Everybody's under us. We are one of the greatest power on earth. It happens to the Russians several times, and the Germans and the old kingdoms as well. And it happened to the British Empire, and so the American or the Chinese is not different. It's only different if they can keep up with a system of morals and human values that can keep them going with that responsibility. So one power I see can be rising is Israel. They have already risen a lot. Nobody. I think it's become visible, and this is also something that's challenging for the Israelis themselves, because they've been trying to avoid that focus on them as one of the greatest powers. But they have been so for half a century or so, one of the greatest power. The second one is the Arabs. I know many people don't look at the Arabs as the Arab nations along the belt of North Africa, the Gulf, and a part of the Eastern Indian Ocean, and part of Iraq, Iran, and these places. Nobody sees them as a great power because they are so divided and so on, but they have a lot of resources. And I know people who work with politics and economics, and they shift their attention to the Arab world as a potential great power to come. But I think their chance only will come when these great powers we see today, China and United States, they get into so big trouble that they become small. And when they become smaller, they will get their chance to build up a force or to unite or to do something about their situation. Maybe they will get help even from the Israelis, because even though the Israelis may hate some of the Arabs, or a lot of them, or maybe the Palestinians or whatever, they get in their teachings about them as the slave sons and so on, they are also the people they have most in common with, and my look into history, I saw that they have helped these nations before. The Jews, the Israelis have been helping these nations to rise before because they have a lot in common and they can be protected under them much more than they can under other rules, because there is something very unique in the Islamic culture, that is the protection of the Jews and Christians. I know everything is depicted differently, as if they're being persecuting them, killing them, and so on. But that's only to serve some purpose of keeping the attention away from them. But I think many analytics, they know that there is this great resource of human resource, natural resource, and a great ideology hidden in the Islamic world that can be a way to rise to power if they need it, and if it's going to be needed for not only the Israelis, but the place will be void and open again. The third strange power that could arise is the African, and people really do not look to Africa because it's so exploited, and they don't get enough of what can you say, strength and knowledge and ability to keep themselves together. They're always fighting in clans, and they've been controlled so much by the Europeans and divided by not only Europeans but also Asians. And now the Turks are there, the Chinese are, everybody is there. But imagine a world where these big powers are very much occupied. They need the resources of Africa, but Africans have also joined the world through the United States, through other places. They're building some kind of understanding of themselves that's, of course, very much in the shadows of their own wars and the conflicts. I'm not saying that they are ready for that, but this could be a third world force to rise, and we'll see a different world altogether from the one we are seeing today. If I'm hoping for that, I don't know. I love monotheism, and I like people with monotheistic views to be ruling the world, and they still are. If it's the Christians or the Jewish, or it's going to be the Muslims, whatever, it's still part of the one God story that I relate to and love and understand as part of my life. And so as long as that power in one of its shapes, it's okay that they are fighting internally and whatever. This is a bad trait in us humans because we want our ideology and dogmas to rule over the others. But it's the same dogmas that keeps them going, because they know they have the truth and they go with that truth that they bear. So I don't know. It's a world with a very difficult situation, of course, and then on the personal level, how to survive all this, I don't know. I keep talking to myself sometimes saying, well, you won't be able to rely on social services. You won't be able to rely on, what can you call them, civil defense and the state to be able to cover everything. People will have to cover things for themselves and to cooperate and help each other. And this is what basically happens with humans. We are good at cooperating when we need it. And this is a trait also found in biology, that it's not only those who can fight for themselves who survive, but those who are good at cooperating, getting things done together. This is what made us also being able to build things beyond our capability. We see it in the ants, we see it in different societies around the world that had flourished. It's the ability to make way for others, not to be only thinking about yourself, but also to build things together. And this capability is deep within us humans, and we will need it because it will rescue whoever is alive then. The idea of charity and compassion, this is what that lady Hannah Veal, that she talked about in one of her stories, the philosopher lady. She said that I think she's Jewish from 1930s. She wrote different books on feminism, the empowerment of women, and so on. But she also looked into the anthropology of humans, and she said that it's the compassion that we had to have had, first of all, in order to survive. Because imagine that warrior got wounded in old days, and if he died, so would the tribe. And so the compassion for this guy or this woman who got hurt or injured helped them survive, and by surviving, everybody else survived. So The compassion is going to save us again, I know. And no society is without compassion, even though they seem so ruthless and they treat their enemies with total ruthlessness and hardship. It's like a hell being in some of these societies, and how they treat people they don't like, ideas they hate, things they fear. And this is our greatest virus for destruction, the way we hate each other and think we can suppress each other's thoughts. I always think about China and how they suppress people from Christian and Muslim and other religions because they wanted to be a united society. But what happened? Did they get rid of these people? Did they grow, or did they just resist? They resisted, and they stood their ground. And there are still 100 million Muslims in the western of China. There are a lot of people becoming Christians, both in Japan and China and so on. It doesn't help, and it doesn't work out. It will only make society falter from within. So there should be another way. And Europe has learned that lesson, but now they seem to forget it again, because when things get difficult and complicated, the easiest thing is to just let's crush the enemy. And they think they're crushing the enemy, they're crushing themselves. And the enemy starts becoming not the foreigner, but the person who is part of the society originally, the European himself. And then they fight, and the wars will come. So we're repeating that history again. But the three powers, I think, will be able to be eligible for the new future. First of all, Israel. Second is the Muslim world, the belt of the Arab world, and the other countries surrounding it. And third is the African. I'm not saying Europeans and United States will be out of the picture, but if they can't turn the tide, well, some others will find their way through, because they will have the raw power, the ability to hold out, and they can live on less means than people who are living in lavishness, and egoism has taken over inside them. So I don't know. We can see. We can follow if we live so long. Personally, I don't hope to live so long. I don't want to see it through. I have already seen it in my imagination and the destruction that could be coming. We always hope and look also towards a kind of civilization that will work together and turn the tide and stop these wars, but it's not going in that direction. Instead of tearing down the walls and removing the weapons, we're building more of them. And this is a clear sign how we are headed, and the way we're thinking, and our politicians and people in power are thinking, and the people behind them. Because I always keep saying, these politicians and people who are only thinking of themselves in power and want to lash out on others, they are only a symptom of how we are as humans, as people following them, living in the society. They will just resemble who we are, person to person. Corrupt leaders does not appear from the blue thin air. They come because of the people who are gotten so corrupt. Good societies, or societies with better, healthy, and more safe and secure ways of looking at things, is because each human is still aware of his responsibilities, and responsibilities to his neighbor, not hurting others, and so on. So I know some people don't believe in this at all. They believe it's the opposite. It's the people who harness the cynicism and the killings and so on who thrive. And they say, yeah, you are just dreaming. This is what makes these societies work and keep up. Like if Putin wasn't very cynical and aware of his power and the power of those around him and putting them out of the picture, he wouldn't have been the top of this society. It's true on that level. The same you can say in the United States. If they didn't put down their enemies and falter the revolutions that's been happening all around the world, and the same with the Israelis and the Turks and so on and so on. This is what keeps them in power. They have to be cynical, and they have to be doing ruthless stuff. But there is a big difference if you're doing it out of necessary and need and you feel hurt about it, or you're doing it because you think it's the value itself. And this is what's gone wrong with us. They're doing it because it's the value itself. That's why Nietzsche said, if you look into the abyss will look back into you. And if you look deep enough in the ways you treat others, and you just find yourself doing it over and over again, well, you lose that moral compass. That's what we've lost, and that's why troubles are coming head our way.